hello.
Hello, Viggy. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks very much for speaking to me.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks very much for a great book as well. I loved it to bits. It's great. A lot of
Thank
it's
you.
the first book that I've read by you, and I definitely won't be the last one. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
So, I mean, before I actually get into speaking about the book, it's quite curious. I studied psychology, and I didn't do that at all in the end. I ended up doing what I'm doing now, as well as translator. I translate as well for a living. But like psychology, I can't it kind of worked way into this kind of interviewing and also reading about other people's
Mm,
problems to kind of I think I didn't go into psychology because I was kind of I don't didn't think I was strong enough to deal with people's problems directly.
mm,
Whereas reading books, I guess it kind of it allows me that little bit of distance. Although certain books don't,
mm.
they kind of really do put you very close to the people's problems, right?
True.
But I'm quite curious. What was it about you? You were as an epidemiologist, I believe. No, is what you
Yes,
worked
that's
as
right.
originally. So I'm quite curious what it was that made you realize that you wanted to write, especially horror, having gone into
Mhm.
that line of business, and then from that line of business, how has that helped your writing?
Sure. So I've always loved horror, but I've
Uh-huh.
also always loved science. And I went to school for biology and then graduate school for epidemiology. And I liked the work. I was working in healthcare research and strategy. But when I moved to a health insurance company and worked in corporate strategy, I hated it.
Right.
Absolutely hated it. And so I thought, what can I do to kind of escape this? And I wrote. I wrote on my lunch breaks. I wrote whenever nobody was looking over my shoulder. And before I knew it, I had a horror novel. And so it took a couple of years. I wrote some more, I practiced some more, and then I decided maybe we should publish this. Maybe we should just go ahead and do this.
Uh-huh.
And so that's how I went from epidemiology to horror writing.
Right.
And I think the science background has definitely helped me in my books. Not all of them have a scientific or medical kind of underpinning, but some of them do. My second novel, Much Too Vulgar, is about a pre-med student, and she's very disturbed. And I was able to use some science knowledge there. And my first book is about a botulism outbreak, so I was able to use my background there as well. So I weave it in wherever I can, but I think it actually has helped me be a better writer. I can be specific, I can be precise, and I can bring in some things maybe people don't usually think about.
Right. But I mean, are you reticent at the same time of adding personal things in your books? Because I mean, I don't know how much of the stuff that I've read in this book is from your personal life. I know that you posted a photograph of a dog. Was it yesterday or the day before? And you called it Tater Tots.
Yes.
Is that that's actually from your?
That's really Tater Tot. He's back there somewhere. I don't know if you can see him,
all
but
right, I
that's
can
really
see it now. You
Tater
can
Tot.
see it looking out the window. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
so I'm not shy about putting my personal life
sure.
in books. I mean, I make sure to, fictionalize it, but they say write what you know. And as much as I love to do research, at least in terms of connecting on an emotional level with a character, I have to be there somewhat,
Uh-huh.
to really be able to describe it. So, yeah, some of my books are really pulled from personal experience, like ripped up the middle in two, very much so.
Right.
Others, like The Rotting Room, which is about a 17th century Spanish nun. I have never been a 17th century Spanish nun, so that one was a lot more research based.
Uh-huh. I mean, obviously, Tater Tots hasn't got much of a say whether you can write about him or not. But I mean, because you do like to write what you know, are there certain people in your circle who kind of say, "Hang on a second, is this based on me? I don't like you doing that," or "I love that you've done that."
Well, so two different reactions. My husband is not allowed to read this book
He's not
because
allowed to
he
read
is
it.
not, no, he is not the husband in this book. It is fictional, but I don't want him to think that he is. So
Right.
he's read all my books, but not this one. Whereas my mom, she is so excited to be a character. She wants to be a character so badly. She says, "Make me the villain, make me horrible. I don't care." So it kind of depends. I have some people who are clamoring to be in and other people who are saying, "Please don't write about me."
Uh-huh. And your husband's okay with you not letting him read a book? I mean, I'm surely you must have found
Yeah.
him hiding somewhere with a copy, no?
I mean, when I first told him, he said, "Why?" And he
Yeah.
said, "Well, what if my family reads it? Are they going to think I'm horrible?" And I said, "Don't worry about it." And then he forgot about it and moved on to other things. So I'm hoping he just doesn't remember.
I'm sure he will do after if he watches this interview anyway. So I was like I said, this is the first book that I've read of yours, but I know that just recently you released a book called The Tinder Chronicles, which is in a completely different, it's a completely
Yes.
different kettle of fish now. So I'm quite curious. I don't know which one you wrote first, but how do you go? What was the transition like from writing the Tinder Chronicles to writing something like this? I mean, how do you decide which kind of genre you want to go to, especially going from this kind of a good book about bad first dates, it says on the website, to
Yeah.
this kind of anti-trad wife horror book, if you will.
Well, so the Tinder Chronicles I wrote years before I wrote Ripped Up the Middle in Two. It
Right.
was originally released one episode every week for about a year. I want to say that was 2020 and 2021, and I was releasing them on Medium, and they've just been sitting there. And then earlier this year, I thought, why not put them all together? I have enough of these to make a full book. So I published it under a pen name because I didn't want Amazon and my audience to get confused and,
Right.
give horror to these romance readers and romance to these horror readers.
Uh-huh.
But that came first, and it was really fun for me because it's humor. I have a lot of humor in my books, but the Tinder Chronicles is based on first dates, a lot of which I actually went on. And it was just fun
All
for me to
right.
satirize them.
That must have been, is it easy for you to write things? I mean, you said that you like to write about what you know, but I mean, to write about past dating and things like that must be really difficult. Or is it really cathartic? Is it actually exactly the opposite?
It was just hilarious, honestly, because
Yeah.
when I was in grad school in Atlanta, I was on Tinder a lot. I was going on a lot of dates, and some of these were absolutely ridiculous. And I thought, I want to tell people about these because they're so hilarious. And so I fictionalized them, some more than others, and just started putting them on Medium. And I mean, they make me laugh, they make other people laugh, and they've just been fun.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, I mean, the best medicine is to laugh, to be able to laugh at yourself, which
It's
is
true.
always great. Yeah, 100%. Uh-huh. All right, so so coming to Ripped Up the Middle into your latest book, which is coming out at the end of the month. Um, I like to ask why writers, when they do, why they choose a specific epigraph. And for this one, you've chosen a section of Rumpelstiltskin. I'm quite curious why you chose that to set up the book.
A couple of reasons. So, as you've read the book, you know this is a supernatural dark fairy tale with psychological horror elements. And I wrote the book before I ever found the idea for the title. And when I was looking for the idea for the title, I was looking at fairy tales. I was looking at anything that could marry the motherhood and the supernatural kind of Brothers Grimm idea. And I found this translation of Rumpelstiltskin. And, at the end, it says something like, and the little man stomped his foot in the ground and ripped himself up the middle in two. And I thought that is the perfect title. You've got fairy tale, and then, I mean, if you've been a mother, you know that a child will literally rip you up the middle in two. So for me, this was the perfect title, and I really wanted to include it as an epigraph so that people really saw where that came from because it is an unusual title, and I love the connection to Rumpelstiltskin because this whole book is kind of an homage to Rumpelstiltskin. It's a play on that classic fairy
Yeah.
tale.
Uh-huh. And so something that was completely new to me was this idea of the fairy doors. I had no idea that this was a thing. Was that
Yeah.
something that came early on, and that was that kind of one of the early seeds for kind of the antagonists of the story?
Yeah, well, I've known about fairy doors for a while. I used to live in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and there are little fairy doors all over downtown. So that was
Uh-huh.
always something I knew about. And then when my daughter was about two, I thought, I could make these. They're fun. I'll put them around the
Right.
neighborhood. She'll love it. And as I was doing that, I thought, wouldn't it be super creepy if something actually lived behind this fairy door and it wasn't a nice, sweet fairy? It was something evil. And then from there, that idea blossomed into let's combine this with motherhood and have these two facets of psychological and supernatural horror.
Uh-huh. And in the book, you actually mentioned that a lot of the kind of the lore, the folklore of the fairies is originally from the UK, which is something that I also wasn't very aware of. Did you dig down a deep hole to kind of find out exactly the kind of fairy
Mhm.
things that you wanted to include in the book?
I would say it was like a medium to deep hole because I knew that this fairy was totally fictional. I mean, it's kind of based on Rumpelstiltskin loosely, but it doesn't have wings. It's not what people might typically think of as a fairy. But I was very interested to read about the UK folklore. I was in Ireland maybe 6 or 7 years ago and was learning more about that, and I found it super fascinating.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, I loved incorporating that into the book. And I love it when my characters can do some research too, because then it also helps the reader learn something too.
Uh-huh. Brilliant. Uh-huh. And something that the main character is called Sadie, and then Cash is the husband that we mentioned earlier, who's quite appropriately called Cash. I'm guessing that was that was for a specific reason because he's kind of the breadwinner of the family now. Um,
Yeah.
this book feels, I mean, trad wife stories is very much part. I mean, it always has been, but it's very, very much part of the zeitgeist right now.
Mhm.
I'm quite curious, what was the specific kind of light bulb moment that you realized you wanted to write a story that was kind of, it went against the grains somewhat compared to the kind of the other trad wife stories that I've read of late? Whereas this is
Yeah,
kind of
I have
she's really kind of
noticed.
fed up and wants to break out of being this typical trad wife in the neighborhood.
I think part of it was just my own experience. And a lot of that comes from the fact that before you become a parent, nobody tells you the truth. They tell you, oh my gosh, it's going to be so beautiful and, unicorns and rainbows, and it's such a peaceful, wonderful time. No, it is not. I was at my worst postpartum, and I think a lot of other moms and dads can identify with that.
Sure.
And I wanted to put that real experience in there. I mean, we don't have to fictionalize that. That is horrifying enough.
Yeah.
So I just wanted a book that told the truth because I was tired of hearing, oh my gosh, why aren't you more happy? Why aren't you yourself? Why don't you look the way you did and act the way you did? This is why. I mean, we all go through it, or a lot of us go through it, and being able to read a book that validates that experience, that's what I wanted when I was postpartum. And since I couldn't really find it, I was like, let's write it.
Yeah. There's one very specific quote related to that. Let's see if I can find it now. I've lost it. Yeah, here. It says here, the truth is irrelevant when you are a mother. So I'm quite curious, without giving too much of the story away, that I mean that was kind of very much a core of Sadie's character. Can you kind of expound on that a little bit? Can you kind of explain a little bit what you wanted to say with that?
Well, being a mother, I mean, so much of what you're dealing with postpartum is your feelings. And I don't know about everybody else, but for me, lack of sleep was a huge trigger for setting my feelings kind of on fire. They were all over the place. So, what I felt and the truth weren't always the same thing. And I think for a lot of moms, that's the same way. And when you're in the middle of it, it is so hard to admit, you know what, maybe I overreacted, or maybe that wasn't exactly the way I thought it was. So, I mean, to a mother herself, the truth is kind of irrelevant because you feel what you feel and you just need to go through it. And then to the people around you, you can't always say, yes, I was wrong. Yes, I'm being like that because you're so caught up in your own experience. So
Hmm.
the truth becomes very, very slippery, especially when you're
Yeah.
postpartum.
Sure. And then I also want to speak about Cash that I mentioned. It's the protagonist's husband, who's pretty much as detestable as they come. I'm quite curious. I mean, if when people when authors write detestable characters, they can either come across as very authentic, like Cash really does, or if they go over the top, they can kind of feel almost slapstick or unbelievable. So I'm quite curious what kind of a barometer you used to make sure that you kept Cash believable and kind of grounded without basing it on your husband that you you said it wasn't nothing to do with your husband.
Yes, well, that is why my husband can't read it because a lot of it did pull from my own experience, and I just wanted to create a character where if you weren't reading it through Sadie's perspective, you probably wouldn't think he was horrible. He's not really doing anything that different from what I think a lot of husbands and new dads do.
Yeah.
They're trying to be there for her, for you, but they don't always know what to do. And when you are sleep deprived and you are dealing with a crying infant and you're really the only one who can do things for that child, having somebody who keeps asking you, oh, where are the diapers? Where are the wipes? What do I do? It feels like weaponized incompetence.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think is not discussed enough and can be truly horrifying. And so, whenever I was doing scenes with Cash, I wanted to showcase that kind of weaponized incompetence that when you're in Sadie's perspective, you're like, he is the worst person ever. Yes, please get rid of him. But if you're looking at it from the outside, he's not doing anything really bad. He's trying to support her. He just doesn't know how because he didn't put in the work to find out how.
Yeah. Kind of coupled to that as well. Whenever I read a kind of a supernatural or paranormal or stories with this kind of supernatural elements, I always, if it doesn't feel grounded enough in reality, then I usually kind of lose interest.
Mhm.
And here there are moments when and I don't want to say that I'm not saying that this was anything like that at all. I loved it, but I'm curious how you managed to, because there are certain sort of fever dream moments there that we don't kind of know whether we can rely on the narrator or not.
Mhm.
How did you keep those as grounded as possible?
Well, a lot of it is the setting. So I wanted to make sure the setting felt as real as possible. I described the nature around it. I described the concrete details that feel very real so that when you're met with something that you're like, wait a minute, it feels real up until the point that it's not. And I love an unreliable narrator. And I think there are a few unreliable narrators that are as intense as a postpartum mom who is running on almost no sleep and doesn't have time for any of this crap. So I wanted you to be in her head and think, is it real? Is it not? And I don't want to give away any spoilers, but that is one of my favorite things is to keep the reader guessing because it also makes you uncomfortable. And I think that's
Yeah.
what horror is supposed to do ultimately.
Uh-huh. That was what I love so much about this book as well. It kept me guessing, and pretty much until the very last page, you really kind of saved the final climax reveal till pretty much the last couple of pages almost, which is difficult to do. How do you kind of do you reverse engineer the story? Did you know where it was going to go, or do you prefer to kind of let it grow organically and kind of start with a kind of a rough idea and kind of go from A to B to maybe to D, then to C, then and kind of figure it out as it goes along?
My process has really changed. This is my fifth book, and I went from pantsing, so just writing the book with no outline, to
Yeah.
outlining. This book was originally outlined, and now I'm back to pantsing. So with this book, I knew the direction it was going. I did outline it, but when I went back and edited it, I changed a lot. So I didn't necessarily change the plot, but I changed a lot of the language to make it feel more immersive. I added some new characters, and that part at the end that I know you're talking about, the big twist, I didn't add that until it was basically done.
Right.
So that was I surprised even myself with that one. And ever since I love the idea of just writing and see what happens because I want to surprise myself too. I think it's more fun writing that way.
Yeah, that's what 'cause I think that's what I said to a lot of people. I said that it's best if you surprise yourself as a writer because otherwise it's almost like following a sat nav. Uh,
Yeah,
which way have we got to go now? Which way have we got to go now to get to this place? So it's yeah,
exactly.
very much so. Yeah. Uh-huh. Um, also, I figured that this would be a great book for a drinking game. Every time, every time that you read lady parts and have it, you have to have a drink because lady parts is in the book so many times.
I would love somebody to play that drinking game. Let's do it.
But also, no, but more seriously though, it feels like a very angry book. Sadie's got a lot of this. I mean, we've mentioned that she's gone through this period where she's post traumatic, postpartum depression. So she's got a lot of pent up anger, and she feels she can't purge it with her partner. So I'm quite curious. You mentioned it's based on personal life, but I'm guessing this is kind of uh, a lot after the fact, no? So what was kind of
Yes
like
and
the
no.
genesis? What was kind of the genesis for you to write it now?
So I actually wrote this a couple of years ago, and I've kind of been sitting on it while I released my other books. I wrote this when I was almost a year postpartum with my second child. And it was very cathartic for me. Whenever something would happen that my emotions were still really heightened, even though I was almost a year postpartum, whenever something happened that bothered me or that I felt like I couldn't talk about with anybody, I wrote it down and then I found a way to incorporate a lot of that into the book. So, yes, it is very angry because I was very angry at that time. In fact,
Right.
I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on here,
Yeah,
but
yeah, no problems.
when my mom read the first draft, she said, "You have to take out so many of the fucks. There are too many
Right.
fucks. Take out the fucks." So I pared it back a little, and I think she was totally right about that. But it does come across very angry. And even when I was editing this, a few months ago, it put me back in that headspace. I don't feel that way anymore, thank goodness. But just reading it, I get angry along with everybody else who's reading it, even though I'm not in that situation anymore.
Uh-huh.
And that's another thing I like about the book is I want people to feel the anger. I want people to
Yep.
understand what a postpartum mom might be going through. There is a lot of anger, and you feel like there's no way to really express it.
Mhm. I mean, so you mentioned that your mother told you to have less fucks in the book. Is she very much? Do you go to her kind of? I don't know whether it's for help or to get her approval of your books. Is that something that you
Yes.
you do a lot?
She
Yeah.
is my first beta reader for pretty much everything I write. So usually when I'm writing a book, I will write it, I will edit it myself, and then it will go to her. And she can help me just She loves reading thrillers and anything fast paced. So she's really helpful if, the plot is dragging, if there are any logical inconsistencies, if something needs to be punched up a bit. And
Hmm.
then from there, I edit again, and then it goes to my professional editor. So she's helped me a lot with just pointing out, this could be faster, this could be tighter, this how it reads, because I'm focused on how I'm writing it, and she's focused
Yeah.
on how it reads for the reader, which definitely helps when I go back and fix things.
Hmm. Obviously, without giving anything away, is there anything about this book that you could tell us that she thought needed maybe kind of sprucing up a bit to kind of make it a bit faster? Because it's not a book that really needs to be fast. It's kind of like it needs to be more of a slow burn for you, so you can
Mm.
really kind of get into Sadie's head now.
Yeah, I mean, well, besides telling me to take out a bunch of the fucks, which I did, she also helped me to punch up some of the, I don't know how to say this without giving away spoilers, so I'll be vague, punching up some of the incidents around the neighborhood that are
Right.
perpetuated by, evil people. I'll leave it at that. She helped me punch those up.
Uh-huh. Okay. Uh-huh. Okay. Um, also, I'm just trying to think what to say. Um, I have lost myself. Lost my. Hang on a second. I've lost my. There
No
we go. Yeah,
worries.
I wanted to talk about the setting as well. Because it's set in a place called Agua Roja, and like again, you said you like to write about places that you or things that you know. I'm quite curious why you chose this specific kind of setting and neighborhood and the neighbors as well to make the story work. I mean, you said that you like to let it kind of grow organically, the story.
Mhm.
But these characters, these neighbors, especially the neighbors who play a big part in kind of Sadie's experience, where did they all come from? The place and the people who inhabit the place.
Well, some of it is like I live outside of Savannah, Georgia. This is set outside of Savannah, Georgia. And this is a fictionalized version of my neighborhood. My mom loves telling all of my neighbors that this is a book about all of us, which I'm like, maybe don't read it if that's what you think. But I wanted to bring in, like, when I was postpartum, I went on a lot of long nature walks. So a lot of that is pulled from where I
Right.
am and what I see, including the nature descriptions, the birds, the plants, everything there. I spent a lot of time out there, so I wanted to pull that in. And then I know you're talking about the yoga moms. So they are, for those who haven't read it, they are the group of moms in the neighborhood who always look Instagram perfect. Their kids are beautiful, they're baking homemade bread, their bodies are perfect, they're in athleisure all the time. And I think that is one of the most difficult sights to see when you're postpartum because you don't feel like yourself. You don't feel like you'll ever get there again. And then you see these moms who are perfect and think, why can't I be like them? Why don't they like me? That sort of feeling. And that's another thing I wanted to explore about the postpartum period
Yep.
is that huge difference between expectation and reality because even the yoga moms aren't perfect, but of course nobody really knows that. So we just keep perpetuating this narrative that you have to be perfect after birth. And if you're not, there's something wrong with you when that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah. And coupled to that, I'm quite curious. As an author, Instagram is a very, very, very useful tool. So I'm quite curious what your relationship is with Instagram. I'm guessing. I mean, it looks like you have fun. I mean, you have a lot of fun with the videos that you make and stuff like that. But having read this book, I'm guessing that you've got kind of a love-hate relationship with these kind of things.
I do. I have since healed that relationship a little bit because I really only follow people in the book community. I don't follow a lot of people I know personally. It just helps me because I know social media can be deteriorating for mental health.
Yep.
So if I only follow book people and only participate in those communities, it's really helpful to me. I do love Instagram as a marketing tool, especially as a self-published author. That's my best way to get the word out. So I love social media for marketing, not so much for personal things.
Right. Uh-huh. And I think you've also have a podcast as well.
Yes.
That's called I've not listened to it. I will do. I promise you. Called Horror
It's
Humor
okay.
Hunger.
Yes.
Um, I'm guessing, and is that interviews with fellow authors and things like that, or and also do you use that as a marketing tool as well? Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about what you talk about on the podcast.
So I started Horror Humor Hunger about a year before I published my first book, just to like get my name out there and network with people. And since then, it's kind of evolved so that each season of the podcast is about a book of mine. And then I
Right.
interview authors. I've interviewed anybody who might have some field of expertise related to the book. So when I did Cold Night for Alligators, I interviewed an alligator expert. When I've done possession-based stuff, I've interviewed exorcists. So, and then at the end, each season has a recipe inspired by the book. That's where we get the hunger. So
Right.
I've talked to, best-selling authors, and I've talked to priests, and I've talked to exorcists, a little bit of everything, anything in the horror community that I think my listeners would enjoy.
Yeah. I mean, having spoken to people like exorcists and things like that, you must have been able to take a lot of notes, and that must be really good fodder for future
Hmm.
books, no?
It was very interesting. I will say that I was talking to one exorcist, and he did an impression of a possessed person. Scariest thing I've ever heard. I was editing that in broad daylight, and I was looking around to make sure nothing was behind me. So that one was fun. That one was very fun.
And is the pod? Do you mean you said there? There's the did an impersonation. Is the podcast video as well, or is it just audio?
It's just audio.
It's just audio. No, no, yes, no. It's just I'll I can't wait to hear that one now. Brilliant. So also, I mean, you've also got. I know you've got in the works Much Too Vulgar with Sophia Louisa Lee, who is writing the
Yes.
screenplay, I believe, for a
Hmm.
movie adaptation, which must be so exciting. How involved are you with that, with her, or have you kind of left that to her for her to kind of work on as her
Yeah,
own
no,
thing?
it's very much a partnership. We actually
Right.
met because of my podcast, and she loved Much Too Vulgar and said, she's a screenwriter. She said, "Can I adapt this into a screenplay?" I said, "Yes, absolutely." And that was about a year and a half ago. And I was actually
Right.
just reading the revised screenplay this morning, and we're finishing that up and finalizing it. And then we're going to move forward into early development, things like fundraising and, casting and things like that. So I'm incredibly involved in the process. I'm going to be a producer, so is she, and I'm extremely excited about it.
Huh? And how close would you say it is to the actual book itself, or is it being adapted quite, or are there certain things there that you've added that you thought, in hindsight, you think, that was a good idea. We should have done that, and you've added some things that weren't in the original book.
A little bit. I would say it's very close to the story. It's very true to the characters, but I've learned a lot just from her seeing this be adapted because, I'm thinking of it like a novelist. I'm looking at it and thinking, how does it read instead of how does it view?
Right.
So I've learned a lot about how to punch things up visually and why certain things are made for it to be a movie versus made for it to be a book. And, in the movie script, we really wanted to avoid voiceovers. In Much Too Vulgar, you're in Keely's head a lot. That's our main character. And we said we don't want to do voiceovers in the
Yeah.
movie. So, we've shifted things around to accommodate that so you still get all the information you need, all the feelings you need without relying on things like voiceovers.
Uh-huh. And coupled to that, I saw that you posted a poll on Instagram asking people what matters most to you when seeing your favorite book adapted for the big screen. So I'm quite curious, what matters to you the most when you go to see a film after having read the book?
I want it to mostly be faithful to the characters. I feel like the plot can change a little bit, but if the characters are there, then you feel like you have something to grab onto and you recognize it. If the characters are completely different from what you expected, it almost feels like a different movie than what the book was, even if the plot's the same. So I would say if you let the characters guide you, then it still feels like it's in the same universe, even if the plot has been twisted around a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh-huh. And then kind of coupled to that, I'm quite curious with someone else that you work on as well, you probably work with very closely, the artwork for your books. I love the artwork for all the books, especially the most recent one that we're talking about now. Is really great. How close do you work with it? There we go. I mean, it's great. The color scheme and everything's great. How closely do you work with the artist, or do you just kind of do they read the story before they actually could come up with the artwork, or do you is it just kind of like you and me speaking now over Zoom to kind of come up with ideas?
Yeah, so my cover artist, his name is Nuna Morera. He's worked with me on all five of my books now. And his process is he reads the book before he does
Right.
anything. I give him no direction. He's amazing, so I just say, here's the book, and then he'll come back with three or four suggestions, three or four options for the cover. And usually one always sticks out, and I'm like, this is it. But they're all good. And with this one, I didn't tell him anything. I just kind of said, it's psychological. I would love to see some of that anguish on the cover. That's kind of all I said. And he gave me this, which is my favorite cover of all of them. And yeah, I absolutely love working with him, and I'm always so excited to see what he comes up with. That's one of my favorite parts of the whole publication process.
Yeah, no, man, that's great because that one especially really doesn't give the story away particularly at all, especially kind of the things we've been talking about, the fairies and all those kind of things. So
Yeah,
it's quite good to kind of go in there blind, which is the
I
best way
think
to
so
read
too.
it. Yeah. Uh-huh. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time, Vicky. I wish you the best of luck with the release. Will you be
Thank
doing a
you.
kind of a mini tour or anything with the book when it releases, or a launch party or anything like that?
I will be doing local media here in Savannah. I have two live interviews next week that I'll be doing on news stations here. I'll be on different podcasts, and then I'll be going to ShiverCon in August in Indiana, which is a big horror author convention, which will kind of be a launch party style thing for this new book since it will have come out, 2 weeks before that.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time. I wish you the best of luck with the release, and
Thank you.
hopefully we'll get to speak to each other again about another book in the near future.
Absolutely. Thank you so
That'd be
much.
fantastic. Thanks so much for your time. All right, have a great day.
Oops.
Cheers then, Vicky.
Bye.
Bye bye now.